There's a principle that we teach a lot, which is called like the first follower principle, that the leader is overrated. That the leader is just a crazy person with an idea until they have a first follower. It's actually the first follower who requires the most courage, because they're the ones who say, yeah, that person's idea isn't dumb.
Hello, builders, and welcome back to the Scaling Therapist Podcast. I'm your host, James Marland. Before we get into today's conversation, I want to invite you to grab my free Unpause Playbook at coursecreationstudio.com/unpause. If you have had an idea sitting in your heart for a while, but you keep feeling stuck, you feel stalled, or you're unsure where to start, this playbook will help you take one clear next step. You don't have to have the whole thing figured out. You just need to take that first step, get the ball rolling. And that fits so well with today's conversation because my guest today is Evan Owens, co-founder and executive director of REBOOT Recovery. It's a faith-based trauma response organization that has literally helped tens of thousands of people through programs in hundreds of locations around the world. This episode is very uplifting, and in this episode, you'll hear how Evan and his wife started with just a small group in their living room, and they watched it grow beyond their living room into a movement. So we talk about movements, we talk about serving people in front of you, listening before building, finding your first follower. You will enjoy that part of the conversation, and knowing the difference between creating a resource and building a movement. So grab your popcorn, get the Unpause Playbook, and then listen in. I hope this is the nudge that helps you put your mission back in motion. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce a special guest to you. It's Evan Owens. He's the co-founder and executive director of REBOOT Recovery. It's a faith-based trauma response organization. Just a little bit about the organization. There's over 50,000 people. Over 50,000 people have completed the programs across more than 425 locations worldwide. He's an author and a keynote speaker, and it's just my pleasure to bring him on the show and talk about his journey to bring this into the world. Evan, welcome to the show.
Man, I am so honored to be here and excited to share. I don't know how much wisdom. I think it's mainly just, refusal to quit. I'm too stubborn to give up at this point, but I'll share any ideas and thoughts I have. So thanks for having me.
Well, let's start a little bit at the beginning, because most people don't start out with like 425 locations. You start with an idea, a dream, or a calling. So can you just bring us, can you take us to that moment when you were thinking, like, you had to do something more with what you had? Or did you start out as a therapist first? Bring us to the beginning. Lay the foundation.
If I had to rank like my top 3 or 4 most beautiful and impactful moments in my life, of course, my day I got married, the day I had a child, maybe the day I was baptized, and then maybe number 4 on the list would be there was a day I came home from work in February. It would have been around 2010. And my wife was working as a doctor of occupational therapy for the military, for the DOD at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And she had invited over some neighbors and some people who she had gotten to know through work, because we were meeting with all these people individually for dinners and lunches and coffees and hearing these same stories. And she had this idea, why don't we just get everybody together, because they're all saying the same things. And so I came home from work and I walked in late to my own dinner party, which is never a good thing with your spouse. But luckily I came bearing snacks, so it was okay. And I came inside and it was incredible. It was as if the room had already shifted from like small talk, dinner banter to like this deep, meaningful conversations. And I was listening to these men and women talk about the deep traumas they'd experienced, whether it was severe loss or guilt, shame, and regret, or betrayal, or senses of identity, or whatever it was. And it was like healing knocked on the door, came in, sat down, and began to do work among all of us, including myself and my wife. And it was just this really profound moment where something special happened. And I went to work the next day and I said, at the time I was working for a technology company, and I called my wife at lunch and I said, I don't know what it is, but I want to do more of whatever we did last night. And in a matter of pretty much a day, my appetite to pursue my other career and to build the company I was building was gone in almost a single moment. And I knew that I wanted to spend more time helping people journey through how do they overcome trauma and embrace a brighter future. And so that's what we did. And we met in our living room. You asked how long. We met in our living room for from 2011, 2010, all the way to 2013 until we finally went on to a military base. I think in 2012, 2013, we got invited onto the military base and things began to really take shape at about that point.
You had this experience and you knew, you wanted to do more.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that you said the other goals, the other dreams faded away. They became not as attractive to you as this, I want more of this. But a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people start there and then we get kind of stuck. I've been
Yeah.
stuck, in the mire and like getting distracted by things. How are you able to go? You had this dream, but what did you do? And maybe what were some of the mistakes you made along the way to get to, where you could actually launch a product or start doing
Yeah.
this as a job?
Well, I think it sounds overly noble probably for me to say this, but it is true. I didn't really have a dream of starting a nonprofit. I didn't of starting a ministry. I had a dream of serving the people who God had put in my life well and loving them totally. And we had people living with us who were going through trauma. We were all in. Like we were up to our eyeballs in people with trauma. And so I share all that to say that first off, we didn't start by having a goal of becoming some like influencer or celebrity or big entity. We started with saying we want to care for the circle really well. Number two is that when you sit across from people, you have people live with us in your leading groups, and you do that for 5.5 years. Jenny and I get way too much credit for how much of the initial content we came up with that really has, I think, what Reboot has become. And that really what we did was we became curators of what was working for other people because you're spending thousands of hours hearing what's working and what's not for people. And then on top of that, you're spending a lot of time praying because you don't know the answers. You don't know what can help them. And I don't have a therapy background. And so I'm just
Mhm.
this idiot who's asking really open-ended questions and listening and telling people I love them and that I don't judge them and that there's no right way to respond to the terrible thing that they've been going through. Like that was the whole strategy for like 5 years. And so how did I get there? I would say the first thing was that. The second thing was realize that I wasn't the like I wasn't really the linchpin. It was these people who validated the idea of this group, meaning there's a principle that we teach a lot, which is called like the first follower principle, that the leader is overrated, that the leader is just a crazy person with an idea until they have a first follower. It's actually the first follower who requires the most courage because they're the ones who say, yeah, that person's idea isn't dumb. And if that first follower happens to be someone who's a person of influence, then it can really take off. And a person of influence doesn't mean of power. It means that God's given them a gift to be able to influence other people. And we just kept getting those people, man, time after time. And that's how it started to grow, was we kept getting first followers to the idea. And Jenny and I kept being like, yeah, if they validate it, then it must be true. And then they would tell their friends and bring their friends, and then their friends would come, and it just created this viral thing. And our superpower never was therapy. Our superpower was building community where people belong. And that's what we're really good at.
Yeah, you hit on two things that I think sometimes entrepreneurs skip over. One is caring for the people. Like you had a genuine interest in their outcome. Like
Yeah.
you cared for what was going on in their life. And then the second thing was you took time to listen to what they were saying and figuring out what works.
Right.
Sometimes being the expert, you just want to share your solution, but you're
Right.
not always listening to what the problem is or where they want to go. So you're
Right.
trying to jam in your solution into what isn't working. And
Right.
then finally, I love that first follower concept. I don't know if you've ever seen the video on YouTube. I'll put it in the
Yeah, the
show notes.
dancers. Yeah, the guy
Yes, the
dancing.
dancers on the
Yeah.
hill.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that is so good. Listeners, if you've never seen that video, check the show notes and click it. It's just, you could probably just YouTube it. I forget what it's called. I think
I
it
think
was
it's
a
called The
TED
Power of
talk,
the First
right?
Follower. Yeah, the first
Yeah,
follower is what it's
first
called. Yeah.
follower, where there's this guy dancing on a hill all by himself, looking like a fool. And then, like 5 seconds, 10 seconds into the video of this guy just dancing by himself, somebody comes in and he shows them the moves. And now you have two dancers. And then
That's right.
they keep doing it and they keep dancing, and within 30 seconds, the entire hill is filled with silly dancers, and I'm
Right.
just like, but the first follower, like, the guy took the time. He didn't, like, oh, maybe he was a better dancer than me, or, oh, he's not doing it right and criticizing him. He just showed him how to do it, and
That's
I
it.
love that concept.
And they're out there too about entrepreneurship that, because I've had four different kind of companies that I've started, I suppose. Some have failed epically and some have been successful. But I say that to say that there was a data point that I read in an article a while back that really resonated true to me, which was that, and I don't quote me on the data here, but the premise was that you had 78% more likelihood of being successful with your new venture if you kept your old job than if you were like, I'm going to be all in and I'm going to quit this job and dive in head first. And what they actually found is because when you dive in head first and you leave the security and the insurance policy of your existing job, what happens is your decisions become short sighted because they become fear influenced. So instead of being able to play a long game and let the business naturally mature through the first 3 years, which are like a massive learning curve, what happens is you feel like I have to produce and I have to produce now. And so this starts to, you over productize too early, you overprice too soon, and you try to expand services beyond your first service even working well. And I think for us, that was in hindsight a huge secret to our success. And I wish it was for noble reasons, and I wish it was because I was really smart. But the truth is, I was scared. I was
Mhm.
scared to leave behind the dock that I was standing on in hopes that I would jump to the boat I wanted to be on because I didn't want to end up in the water drowning. And so for me, I stood on the dock and I kept working my tail off, working, it was, call it entrepreneur by day, minister by night is really what I was. And I did that all the way until eventually the boat crashed into my dock and I didn't have a dock to stand on anymore. And then I think that was when God's like, okay, it's fine. It's time for you to step onto the boat. And we did, but it took us all the way until 2016. In hindsight, it was good for us, and I think it shaped our ability to scale what's become really bigger than our group. It's become a movement, I think, of some sort.
Mhm.
But I think it was because we didn't try to productize and companionize too quickly. We just let it be a movement. And the truth is, if you're trying to build a movement right now, my advice would be this. If you want to sell a lot of resources and you want to be a bestseller on the books list, or if you want to just move a lot of product, you don't really want to build a movement. Don't call yourself a movement builder. Call yourself a resource ministry and focus on how do you sell product. If you want to build a movement, first ask who's already following you and identify why are they following you. What about your message is resonating with them? And then ask them for their advice of where do I find more of them? And, organization is where, becoming an organization is where movements go to die. You see this with churches. They're booming, they're growing, and they say, okay, now we need to bring in this executive pastor who's a business guy. And then all of a sudden it loses its heart. And you see this a lot with ministries too. They become so structured that everything becomes a predictable risk, right? All in the name of being vision, all in the name of strategy. But the truth is that movements are wild and they grow like wildflowers and they go places you didn't expect them to go, and they're going to take you deeper than you feel comfortable going because that's the nature of a movement. You're not driving it, it's pulling you along. And that's what I would say. If you want to build a movement, do that. If you just want to sell resources, nothing wrong with selling resources. Go and do that. But I see a lot of people who are confusing the two. Do they want to build an organization which has tiered controls? Do they want to build a movement, or do they want to build a resource ministry? And once you figure out those three, man, it's a lot clearer which thing you're building.
It sounds like you've had to think long and hard about that, or at least
I think about it all the time.
yeah, like, that
Yeah.
was really profound. And, like, when did you know that it was bigger than you? When did you know that there that you are not in control anymore of what is going on?
Yeah, we went to Oklahoma City on a weekend trip. So what we would do is we would lead groups during the week, and then the weekends we would drive to other cities and start groups in these other cities and do trainings. We called them leaders academies. And I remember we had sent the materials, we had trained a group, and we were now coming back for our second visit to our third location, which was Oklahoma City. This would have been 2013, 14, somewhere in there. And when I walked in and I heard them talk about their group, and when I heard them describing some of the ways they were walking through the content, they were using words they'd never heard me say. They'd never read that I said, but it was the exact same words that Jenny and I and my team had been using in our own local group.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, okay, this is striking a chord. And then I remember in 2016 when we released our very first curriculum ever, we had maybe 11 locations when we released it. And I remember we had this idea that there was a lot more Evan and Jenny's out there, people who were workers for the harvest, people who wanted to do more than running a 5K or playing a charity golf tournament to help somebody. They actually wanted to get their hands dirty and help people, but they didn't have a way to do it. And I remember in the first 6 months, I think we jumped from 11 to like 46, 48 locations in a matter of 6 months. And I remember thinking, okay, so this is special. And man, that was an exciting time. Terrifying. Totally scared out of my mind that I was going to blow it, but really exciting.
I have a couple logistical questions, because how do
Yeah.
you maintain high quality with such a big amount of growth? Because people do things different ways. They have the material, but you're cut from a little different cloth. They have their own experiences. Their churches are different. How do you help
Well,
people and keep the quality up when there's such a, like, you can't plan for everything. So
no,
what do
you
you
can't.
do?
Well, two things. First off, we were very fortunate. The first two audiences that we expanded to, we began serving only veterans and their families, military families. Then in 2018, there was a mass shooting at a club in Orlando, Florida called the Pulse nightclub that we responded to, and we were able to start a group down the street from it. And I remember with these two audiences thinking these are people who know how to follow standard operating procedures. If, I'm not teaching them to be lay counselors, I'm not teaching them to be certified social workers, I'm teaching them to run a reboot program. And so that was the first thing is we worked really hard at creating robust training, but also really clear standard operating guidelines and procedures for here's how reboot should look. And when you walk into a reboot anywhere in the world, you're going to see these same 5 to 7 cultural identifiers that are going to be the same regardless if you're in a prison, all the way to a military base, to an inner city shelter, all the way over to like a country Baptist church. You're going to see certain things that you're going to be like, man, this feels totally the same. So that was the first thing we focused on was that. And because we had a chance to work with people who knew how to follow the rules, let me tell you, the hardest groups for us to expand still, the ones that we love the most, but also the hard churches notoriously think they know how to do everything better. Every church thinks they are the answer to the kingdom's problem. And that's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I want to equip these people. But I'd say that's the most unruly group that always wants to say, like, I know the curriculum says to do it this way, but let's insert this other element because we think that would make it better. And we have a team of coaches and a training process and a vetting process where each month about 200 to 250 people reach out saying they're interested in leading a group, but only 10 to 15 of those will actually meet our requirements and start a group. And of those, if they're not following our SOPs, I would argue that they're going to be um, either they're going to end up birthing kind of something separate or they're going to struggle. And
Mm.
so that's what our coaches do. And so in the early days, it was focusing on SOPs, and providing really good coaching and doing quality check-ins often with these groups. That was how it started.
So is the coaching just like do you make them get the coaching? Do they buy the coaching? Is the coaching like a
It's
ministry and like
Yeah, so the way it works is they purchase an annual leader pass for
okay.
$299 a year, and that certifies them and gives them access to all of our curriculum and our training and all of that in order for them to be able to facilitate one of our reboot programs. And then after they have done that, they complete our Reboot Leaders Academy. They get ongoing coaching sessions with one of our staff members. We also add them to a group of other leaders like them that are speaking into their situation. So you get a community support, kind of a coalition of leaders, so to speak. And then they start their first group. And I'll tell you the fastest way you're going to know if they are going to be successful or not. People typically, I think you won't know based totally on the number of participants that start. You'll know based on the number of participants that finish. And so people who are great at community building, who are great at empowering other people, who are great at seeing seeds of potential in individuals, that's who we look for. We don't necessarily look for people who are your best counselors because your best counselors should be doing, in often cases, one-on-one counseling or should be running private practices because they have that credentialing and those skills. But this is something that we can offer a layer to the cake for everybody to facilitate a reboot program. And I believe that groups that peer-to-peer is often more powerful than one-on-one, or equally powerful, let me say it like that, because you have the power of genuine empathy. The leader's
Yeah, I
there for
love
no other
groups.
reason. Yeah.
I work, our church runs regeneration and reengage,
Yeah.
and I'm a reengage leader.
Nice.
And
Well, that's for
that
now. You're going to be a reboot leader soon, but yeah.
well, so that's leading me to my question. Like, how do these programs work? How does this work with other ministries? Because our church is not huge, but it's like 2,000 people. So it's
Big.
big and it
Yeah,
has
it's
its
really
own
large.
machinery, and we know we're probably a little bit like, oh, we know better type of thing because they have some successful ministries. So if somebody
Absolutely.
wanted to start a ministry for people who have gone through trauma, because I did regeneration. I
Yeah.
did it and then I led a group and then I worked with like people coming in. Trauma is just hand in hand
Yes,
with
absolutely.
that. So a group like this that deals specifically with trauma is, where would it fit and how would you get it started?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is it is going to be a program that it is going to operate at its best when it's focused not just as a program or as a additional small group for church members, but when it's also focused as a externally facing bridge into other programs. That's where we're
I
operating
agree.
at our
Yeah.
best. That's where a lot of church programs, bluntly, they're just what's the new flavor of the month for this trendy church program. And I love them. And I'm a big fan of these programs, but they're programs written for Christians by Christians, exclusively with Christian language and assumptions that are not always true. Our
Yes.
program assumes when people come in that they don't know Jesus. We operate in a lot of fire halls and military bases and prisons that are secular environments because we're trying to change the way trauma is treated for the next generation to include peer and faith-based protocols. So if that's true, we have to speak the world's language while operating inside of a kingdom vantage point. And that's a delicate dance that we have to walk, but that's part of our calling, we feel like, here at Reboot. And for our churches, that's the first place. Second place is, man, Reboot, we only do one thing: peer-led faith-based trauma healing. We don't do all these other things that churches are so good at, right? We don't do relationships, we don't do finance, we don't do substance abuse, we don't do marriage, we don't do any of these other, job
Hmm.
training. We don't do that stuff. And so I would say that Reboot's at its best also when it's coming alongside other ministries that are already cooking. We're the sweet potatoes. They've already got the main dish and some green beans going. We just come in with like our part
Yep.
of the dish. And so that's the first thing I would say. The second
And
thing
some
is
people are
it's
looking for the sweet potatoes, and some people are like, "Oh, I don't need sweet
they hate
potatoes.
they
I
hate
want mashed
yams. That's
potatoes."
right.
Yeah,
That's some of us.
I'm
That's
good
right.
with food analogies.
Me too. No kidding. Except for mine usually involve cake, and they're not analogies. I'm actually eating cake. But I say all that to say that when you're a church, the way it would work is really simple. That leader would reach out to one of our expansion coordinators. That person would have a conversation about, hey, here's what's expected. The first step would be they identify a team of two other people that they want to create a team of two or three leaders who are going to facilitate Reboot. We don't want it to just be one person by themselves. We want a small team of people who can do it with different skill sets. If it's going to be if it's going to be a male and female group, we want to blend in that leadership
Hmm.
team as well. And we help you build your team. And then at that point, you get your leader pass. And then from there, we really give you, think of it like a franchise. We're giving you everything you need: your outreach materials, your marketing, your branding, your training, your curriculum, your follow up, your measurables in terms of how you're going to measure the success of your group. Everything is included. And then we have an online portal called Leader Hub that's a leaders only tool that gives you a lot of that as well. So my point is that at that point, it takes 8 weeks. So from the time you call and you're ready to get going, 8 weeks from now, you could be starting a reboot program, making a difference in the life of people who honestly might be waiting on you to step into your calling, because their calling in their life to become who God's called them to be can't be unleashed until you've stepped into your calling to lead them into a reboot program. And that's why I do what I do. It's because my personal mission in life is to release people to the callings that God has for them that they've been deceived by trauma into not fulfilling and not stepping into. And that's why I get up every morning. And there's somebody right now in the church that you go to that they can't step into their calling until a reboot group crosses their path or until they go through trauma healing through some other method. Um, and once they do, they're going to be like, dang, I spent years letting this experience hold me back. And that's awesome. That's what it's about.
Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your passion. It's really
No,
inspiring,
you're
and
sweet. Listen,
it's
thank you for listening. Genuinely. Thank you.
yeah, I can definitely see where this could work very well with some other ministries that need this type of specialization, especially if you're bringing in people who are not grew up in the church. People who grew up in the church also have trauma, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, like relationship betrayal, church hurt,
Pastors. How many pastors have
pastors, yeah,
faced trauma and betrayal? And yeah, no doubt.
gut wrenching. Yeah. Yeah, this
Therapists.
is
How many therapists have secondary traumas and things that they've, you know what I mean? It's just so many groups of people that I feel like we can serve, but we don't serve them. I mean, again, Reboot's kind of overrated. It's really the person who's that local leader. Like, they're the face of Reboot. It's not me or Jenny or Brian on our team that's like Mr. and Mrs. Reboot. Like, it's not about we're not trying to become like Christian influencers. We want to like equip people in these local communities who are already in a place of influence and just give them the tools to influence easier and better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like a multiplication ministry because your pastor, whoever is at the top, can only help so many people. They're not in, they're not availability or attention or energy. Like there's a limit. Like all of us have limits. So how do you expand? How do you help more people? The peer-led group is a perfect solution. I want to talk to the listener to the show. If you've been inspired like me, as Evan was talking, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do? Are you just going to be like, oh, this is nice to listen to? Or are you going to, pick up the phone and see or go to the website and see if there's something, if there is the door you should step through. So I wanted to give you, Evan, just a moment to just, if somebody is inspired to like learn more, where can they find out more about what you do, your ministry, and how to get involved?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody, rebootrecovery.com is where you're going to go. But also, if you really want to learn more about starting a group, and you'll go there, you'll click on lead. It literally says lead, join, give, or something like that. Like, you can't get lost on our website. It's pretty straightforward. And we're in all 50 states. We're actually up to, I don't know, over 600 locations now, which is incredible. We had a huge growth spurt in the last 6 months of the year last year. A lot of different backgrounds where Reboot's working in entrepreneurship hubs, working in prisons, working in whatever. So you could be a person that can bring us in that. And if you want to go to our website, do that. You can fill out a form, talk to one of our team, or if you want to just reach out to me personally and I will connect you with the right person, it's just Evan, EVAN, at rebootrecovery.com. And I would love nothing more than just to connect with you and help you step into maybe something that would be the greatest adventure of your life. And if you've been leading Bible studies and feeling a little dry in that, and you want to reach outside the walls of the church and maybe reach people who are in a desperate place, and you want to look evil in the eye and say, hey, you're not going to win in this scenario because a saint is here, then Reboot's for you. And we want to equip you to be able to do that and to how to build a team. And so reach out to me, Evan at rebootrecovery.com, EVAN, and I'll get you connected.
Beautiful. Evan, thank you so much for being on the show. You're very inspiring. I love your process and your servant heart, and that you just want to help people recover. So thank you so much for being on the show and your ministry.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Okay, I'll put it in the books. All right, listeners, don't just sit there. Go put your mission in motion. We'll see you next time. Before we go, I want to say thank you to our pro-level sponsors of the Scaling Therapist Services Directory. These are the people and companies helping therapists, coaches, and practice owners grow and break through business bottlenecks. I want to say thank you to the following sponsors: Humor Speaks, RevKey, Practice Collab, Arc Integrated, TheraSAS CRM, Guest Compliance Consulting, Freedom Business Solutions, Bossco, and Profit Comes First. I'm so grateful for their support and how they also support the community. And speaking of support, I'm going to be sending out a special offer from Ray at Humor Speaks. Ray shared something with me about how to turn your worst selling month into your best selling month. He's going to be launching a program on that, and my listeners get a special discount that will be shared with you in the email. You don't have an email? Head over to CourseCreationStudio.com. Get the free Unpause Playbook. You'll be signed up for the newsletters, and you'll get the offer from Humor Speaks. I've worked with Ray for like the last 2 years. I read his stuff on LinkedIn, and I'm really thrilled that he's offering this to the audience. If this episode encouraged you, if you've decided that you want to take one step forward, Don't just listen, take that one step, whether it's with me, with the Unpause Playbook, or some other coach. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to the people you're serving, you owe it to the people whose lives you can change and make better to walk through. What door is opening in front of you, and what would it look like to just walk through it? Thanks for listening. Thanks for being builders. Now, don't just sit there. Go put your mission in motion. We'll see you next time.